Blessings, and how exciting. We are week 2, module 2, week 2. What fun. I hope you loved week 1, learning about the nodes and their signs and their axis. And obviously doing module 1, you've got a good understanding of the signs, yeah? And so this is just another layer. So the nodes, there is so much to the nodes, and looking at the nodes by sign and house is just the very first beginning layer. You are going to want to divulge into their conjunctions and transits, and and we spoke a little bit about the nodal transit and your own north node transit and the south node transit. We chatted a little bit about that last week. So this week we're going to add another layer, and that's just the house. Okay, so we could of course spend a year talking about the nodes and all the combinations and all the variations and what they touch and what else is happening in the chart. Obviously, when a transit planet connects to a node, that's going to amplify and activate something. So there is a million possibilities, and what I'm, of course, you all know my aim for this 6 weeks is to give you a little taste and to start to build your knowledge up onto a few things that I love looking at and working with in the chart. So that's sort of where I want to go with it, is layers, is just building the layers, building the puzzle, the pieces, putting everything together. So there is going to be loads of, oh my God, there's so much stuff. So ultimately, there is just so much stuff. Like, we can't even, seriously, this just goes on forever. And so I'm having this real duality of, because I've got this new computer, am I looking at myself, or am I looking at the camera, the little light that I used to look at in my old one? But when I went and looked back at my old one, last week's one, just for a couple of moments, it seemed better if I was looking at myself and not, because it's like I'm looking at you as opposed to looking up there. I don't know. So if I'm looking all over, just forgive me. I'm trying here. I'm working a Venus purchase in a Venus retrograde, which has been very interesting. So let's do week 2, nodes in houses, where the nodes express themselves. So of course, the node and their sign is, the sign axis that our node is in is very important. And then we're going to add the house axis to it too. So for some of you, there's going to be possibly a real paradox of what's going on, that your north node is in Libra, but it's in the first house. And that it will feel like this complete parallel, because you're trying to learn about other people whilst trying to be individual. And you will, and that's the thing, this is all experiential. So I want to hear all about maybe the complexity of your nodes and what's going on for you. Mine are pretty easy. So I think that they're pretty basic. Yeah. I think that there's a couple of combinations that can be quite the paradox. Okay. Because we know the houses, you all know the houses, and you're going to get another layer here of you going, oh, so north node in Taurus and then the north node in the second house. Well, what do you think? It's the same, but different. We know that the second house rules Taurus. So if your north node is in the second house, of course, it's going to have Taurian qualities, but then your north node might be in Leo, so it's going to be a little bit more flamboyant and dramatic and really standing in that independence. And like I said, we could talk about the million variations, but that's sort of for us to keep going on with our study and to further ourselves. And we can certainly chat about it in the group and in our lives. However, there's a million different combinations and how it plays out, because there is so much more to the chart that is activating the nodes. And so last week what did I chat on? I chatted about, sort of the 18 to 19 years, the collective energy when every 18 months, when the nodes change, sort of what that brings up for a collective, then your own nodal return. So we've chatted about that, chatted about the half nodal return. So today, apart from going through the houses, which is going to be relatively, I would say quick, because you know what each of the houses represent. That's the simplicity of this. And this is what I was talking about with my right-wing woman and my husband. And for me, it's all about simplicity, getting the very basics. And you all know that because you've done level 1 with me. But I just want to reiterate that because, again, everyone always wants more, and the complexity of, but I want it to be like bigger than it is. And for me, I'm just like, hey, strip it back and understand the very core of it. And ultimately, the very core of it, without adding all the complexities, which we want to do and we're going to do, of course, like as we continue our study and read more books and articles. And I mean, that's all I do. I go to the gym every day and listen to astrology. That's all I do. That's it. I can be on the treadmill for an hour, or I do weights, and then I go and then I walk for an hour or something. Always astrology. I'm either listening to the Leo King or Kaipacha, or just little random YouTube videos on Uranus or Neptune. Like, I am still, like, this to me is just like life. It is everything. I can't get enough. So I am constantly learning and constantly absorbing and constantly adding new dimensions and depths to my own understanding of astrology. And for me, this whole module 1, module 2 is really about introducing you to everything. Just introducing you gently to start to put things together and to start to question, well, if my north node is next to my sun, what's that going to mean? Well, I tell you now, that's a very big purpose here, a very big destiny. That's why we do module 1. What is the sun? The sun is everything. So, of course, you're going to start adding the ingredients, okay? So I am the ingredients. I feel like these courses are just the ingredients. Like, no, like the recipe. I feel like I am the recipe. I just want to give everyone the recipe because, like I said to Joel last night, I believe astrology is really simple. I do. And that there are, of course, complex layers, and the language, if you don't understand it, it can seem a bit over the head. But that's why I feel like I want to be the recipe for everyone and really get people excited about knowing their own chart and understanding who they are from a really deep level, which then just opens you up to this astrology world that is like the only language I speak. You all know that. I'm talking to the same people I was talking to last module, but it is just my Gemini Mercury that just keeps talking. So, so ultimately, I'm just going to have a look at a couple of the things. Yeah, the nodes, so just really briefly go over a little bit of this. The nodes do strengthen whatever they touch, yeah? So the north node, of course, strengthens the positivities of the planet. It's going to amplify that. So, of course, if I was watching a thing on nodes the other day, and it was about the north node and the sun. So, yeah, the north node next to the sun, I was looking at famous people's charts in a webinar thing that I was involved in, and it can really reveal like a superstar, someone who can be a superstar, like their destiny is big. So if your north node or your south node is very close to an illuminary, of course that's going to be quite big, yeah? And I feel that the south node can somewhat be like a karmic thing that you've come in with, like it feels karmic. So if the south node is on the sun or is on the moon or is on Venus, like it can be this karmic. It can maybe feel like a block, but it's just that it feels like it can't be fully expressed, but it's because they must move toward their north node. So, of course, we want to identify with the sun, of course, like that's what we're here to do. We are our sun sign. But then if the south node is on the sun, that's a bit of a repression of that person's full personality. Like it's like they sort of can't really be who they are. Maybe they're living for like the people around them. And there's going to be and a million different interpretations of that. I just want to keep it clean and simple. So the south node hitting any planet, it tends to be, you know, a little bit trickier to navigate, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to move away from the south node. And if the south node is touching a planet, it's more karmic. It's more so you've come back to really, you know, in some books it's about that, you know, in the past, you know, you weren't good in love, and you've come back, and now that's your karma, is that it's harder for you, say it's a Venus south node, it's harder for you to open up in love, or receive the unconditional love that you so desperately crave, whatever that is. You know, obviously you're looking at all the different planets, which you all know. So of Mercury, it's communication. And, you know, let's just go and strip back to the basics and just understand that. So of course, when the node is touching any planet, it's activating that planet in any way. Yeah. The south, like I said, so the north node strengthens the positive of the planets, and the south node can lessen and weaken the planet that it touches. Now, the weirdest thing is that every astrologer has a different interpretation. I have read astrology books that say that the north node touching the luminaries is a detriment, like it's not a positive thing. But then, who was I watching yesterday? It might have been Stephen Forrest, or no, I think it was this other astrologer I've never heard of. He was an old guy, all talking about vocation and your career and your purpose, and it was an amazing webinar. I watched that the whole time I walked on the treadmill yesterday. And he, you know, he's the opposite. He's just like, and to be honest, I think we have to go with what feels right for us. And when I read that about north node touching the sun or moon is not positive, I'm like, no, I don't believe that. I actually believe the north node is our karma. So it probably nearly pulls us away from the south node, I believe, quicker. We start to get the north node lessons a little bit more swift, I believe, especially if it's on the sun. Okay, that's what I believe. But ultimately, too, up until people are around 30, they're playing in their south node. Like, that's sort of usually where most people are, up until 30, even 40. They're playing in their south node. They haven't activated their north node yet, unless they're really aware at maybe 20 and they start to understand this sort of stuff and know about the nodes at 20. I think that awareness is the key. It's the superpower. It's the game changer in life, right? So if you know this sort of stuff, you know, I'm teaching my girls about their nodes, so they're going to understand the difference. And for me, the simplest way to put it is when you're feeling in shadow and comfortable and in lack, you'll drop back into the south node because it's easy there. Again, it's the path of least resistance, isn't it? But the challenge is to be determined enough to keep pulling toward the north node. Yeah, so like I said, transiting planets over the nodes are very important. Transits to the houses can awaken and activate the nodes. So if your node is in the 4th house and, you know, a planet like Saturn or something starts going through, that's going to activate, or the other way around. If the node is going through a house, that can start to activate something. So these are all the things that we want to know. These are all the millions of layers, right? So the south node hitting a benefic planet, so like Jupiter or Venus, can, like I said, you know, what I believe is that it can sort of lessen and weaken the luck maybe, but it can actually make someone more comfortable in that. So what I've found here is that the south node conjunct a benefic planet can actually make someone feel really comfortable in that. So comfortable, like just for example, like Jupiter and gambling with money, they might be lucky in that. So it's going to depend on 8 million different things in the chart. But there is this element of the south node conjunct the benefic planets, Jupiter and Venus, where there is this sort of understanding that there is more positivity around it. Now, it's going to be different for everyone's chart. I've seen a lot of people with south node Venus conjunct, and it's very hard for them to get into relationships. You know, they find that there's always a struggle. So they've got to pull toward that north node to balance out and to even the karma on that south node, so that they can sort of activate the Venus and we can get pulled away from that. right? So that sort of makes sense. That's what we want to do anyway. However, there's this other sort of train of thought that when the south node conjuncts a benefic, that there's a real comfortability in that. So they win. They're winning the money, like everything manifests. So it's harder to actually want to go away from that south node. They want to stay there, but it's actually like a trap. Like that's where they're stuck then is, oh, you know, someone who gambles a lot or drinks a lot or who is like gluttonous, like Jupiter, or, you know, maybe it's Venus, maybe it's sex, and, you know, who knows? Like it can be a million things. But ultimately, this was sort of in relation to a south node in the fifth. So a south node in the fifth, which is about gambling and sex, conjunct Venus, Jupiter, can be lucky. So they become hedonistic, right? It's all about instant gratification. So it's harder for them to want to go away from that north node, that south node. Yeah, that's the thing. I hope that makes sense. So that's sort of a little bit of what I wanted to chat about there. Then I wanted to say, ultimately, the house axis is just as important as what you've just learned about the sign axis, yeah? You want to start to navigate your own sign and house axis. So you want to really understand how these are going to play out for you, really put those into your own formula, your own combination, and balance them out. I want to hear, you know, everyone's and who's got some paradoxy sort of stuff going on. And when a node falls in an angular house, obviously that's 1, 4, 7, and 10, it's more amplified because obviously the angular houses are the front row tickets to our life, aren't they? You know, their relationships and what we're bringing in and our foundation and our public. So when a node falls in one of those houses, it's quite prominent, but especially if it falls really close to the ascendant, descendant, IC, or MC. So like if it's on that is going to give you a true paramount indication of your purpose or your destiny and your lessons here. So in this webinar I was watching, this guy talked about a lady who had her north node on her descendant, and she was a partner in an amazing business, like that was worth billions of dollars. So she started there, and then she became partner, which of course, what's the descendant? It's partners and other people, what we attract in. And yeah, and then she became really successful. So her north node was about being a partner in a business, which is amazing. And then there was another story. I'm so glad I watched this one yesterday because it was only available for like 24 hours or something. And yeah, I was just lucky that I seen it and I started watching it. Not lucky, no such thing as luck. It was perfect because I got to listen to some more things to add to what I'm sharing with you guys. He also shared a north node in the fourth. And now the north node in the fourth, I mean, we know what the fourth is, and we're going to go through the houses in a minute. We know what the fourth is. It is home. Yeah, it is the roots, the lineage, but it's also real estate. Okay, so whilst north node in the fourth would be like north node in Cancer. So this is where, you know, it's that astrology for the soul book. She doesn't actually go through separately and do North Node in Aries, North Node, she'll just say North Node in Aries or the first house. So it is quite in depth and very brilliant, like a brilliant book if you want to add another dimension and really dive deep. But the weird thing is that often people could find those sorts of books too complex. I've had people say I don't really resonate or I don't understand that book. So that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Hello, queen of simplicity, queen of fucking just lay it out, call it for what it is and don't add the drama, yeah? So sometimes it's with these books and stuff that you can get a little bit muddled up, right? You can get a bit confused even, because you're not really knowing the language, so it's a little bit confusing. And even in, you know, I use all my books for reference, obviously, as you know, because I don't have a program, and that's my next year's purchase. Okay, I purchased my laptop this year. Next year, I'm purchasing the astrology program to work with. So, yeah, all of my books, and even when I'm reading it, like, I understand it, but I'm like, if someone doesn't understand that, it's not really clear. It's not really clear. They're just saying, oh, if your north node is in this house and your south node is in this house, this is what it is. Like, it's a great little summary, but it's not going, what does it mean to have the north node in that house and what does it mean to have the south node in that house? It's a little bit mixed up, yeah, which I find that's probably why people get a little bit overwhelmed when they're reading books, because they don't have a great foundation. Not like you all. with your great foundation. Yeah, so anyway, so he said that the North Node in the 4th house for this lady was all about real estate. She become apparently like really wealthy and in her real estate. So, and that's something that I wouldn't have thought of, because I would have, of course, thought straight to the sort of homemaker, depending on the sign. Yeah. So if it was a North Node in the 4th house, it is about the home, but it was in Leo, it means that the mother has to stand independently and teach her children to not be a martyr. Yeah. So that's how I would see it, but obviously I would look at a million other things, but that's how I would just go, oh, North Node in the 4th, very much about nurturing, feeding people, comforting people. You know, I always forget that the 4th is real estate, because it's houses, it's the physical house, it's the manifestation, it's what we are in, yeah? Oh, I love watching leaves blow in the wind. It's like my favorite thing, one of my millions of favorite things. So also what's really important is to look to the house rulers of the nodes, and those traits are important to develop. So if your node is in the 6th house and your 6th house is ruled by Pisces, you want to go and have a look at Neptune and have a look at how happy Neptune is. So that's another little thing you can play with. Obviously, that's not the core of what I want to teach you, but I definitely want to add like a little extra bit so that you've got these other little incentives to keep diving deeper. You know, look at your so this famous guy with the North Node sun, he had a Leo ascendant. Excuse me. This is just, it's all just happening right now. He had a Leo ascendant. So what, Leo rules the sun. So we go to the sun, we look at the sun. His sun was in Libra, but his North Node was right on his sun. So that's fame. That's fame. That is big fame. So you want to look at your chart ruler. You know, is the node making any aspects to the chart ruler? That's important to look at. Obviously, your angles, is it making any aspects, or is it on an angle, or is it in an angular house? Again, important. And then just, yeah, and just say it's in the 3rd house. So it's not in an angular house, but it's in the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is ruled, like, you know, is ruled by Gemini. Oh, well, it is ruled by Gemini, so let's go. It's ruled by Leo. So then you want to go and have a look at the sun, like the sun. Where's the sun? How happy is the sun? What's the sun doing? So it's all of these beautiful, joyful, awesome, bloody things, right? So that's a little bit about houses, and a little bit about how you can play with it and start putting it together and diving in. So you're going to get this really quickly, because you've already got the signs, okay? So I wanted to spend that little bit of time with that little extra stuff, so that if you can have a look at all the sort of chart ruler stuff and what houses and, you know, all that sort of stuff, because these are the cool things that we start to look at, you know, nodes touching planets and aspecting, and we're not talking aspects, and you know, and I won't even do that, I don't think, as a module. Even next year, I think I'm just going to stick with these two, maybe do something around relationships, because that's fun, and maybe asteroids too. And I do want to do something with the part of fortune as well. But yeah, and just, you know, a couple of cool asteroids like Ceres and Lilith, and, you know, I love all that stuff. That's all, to me, are quite a big part of the chart. So again, it would just be an introduction to those things. Anyway, let's focus on the now. Yeah, so all of these extra little things are what you're going to want to dive into, because you're going to get this really easily, because you know what the 1st house is ruled by. It's ruled by Aries. So, of course, if your North Node is in the 1st house, it's very Aryan, yeah? And that's where you're going to start to understand the paradox and understand, oh, but my North Node's in Libra and it's in the 1st house. So that's a real paradox. And ultimately, look, I think that the Libra-Aries axis, which is also the 1st and 7th house axis, is definitely, I would personally say, the most challenging, because, and, you know, probably even, I wouldn't say, yeah, look, maybe the whole angular houses axis could be the most difficult, because the Aries Libra is very much about self and others, and it's about relationships on all levels, a relationship with yourself and with everyone else, right? Marriage, partnership, business partnership, everything, yeah? So, you know, there's a that's going to be like a push, because you've either been all about yourself in one life, in your past life, and then you're coming in here to be more giving and sharing and about harmony and not having to be a winner because it's about Aries, or it's the other way around. You've been, you know, you've been the caring, sharing, Libran person, and you've come now to stand on your own 2 feet and stop being codependent. Look, that's the same as the 1st and 7th house axis. I'm still going to go through, and we've still got notes and different points and stuff, because I wanted to still separate everything. I think it's important, and that's what was always really full on, because I mean, I've been reading that North Node book by Jan Spiller, The Path of Your Soul, or Path of the Soul. Yeah, for a decade, and it was for me. I was like, I want to see it separately. I don't want to just see, well, Aries, because I'm like, oh, but I've got a Leo North Node and not an Aquarius North Node, or not a Cancer North Node, so I don't want to have it in the same house. But it does make sense. Like, of course it makes sense. You're going to get it. You're going to just go, oh, yeah, it makes sense, right? It all just adds up. But I sort of like to separate it a little bit. But yeah, that paradox between Aries, Libra, and 1st and 7th, I think, yeah, you'll have to share with me if anyone has that. I know that, yeah, someone will probably have at least one of it. Yeah, have at least an Aries or Libra, or know someone with Aries, Libra, or know someone with 1st and 7th, children maybe, friends, family, yourself. Very interesting. And I would say, I suppose, then the Capricorn Cancer, which is the 10th and 4th, that could be the next challenge, I suppose, because it's about career and home, and how do you move away from that. And I'm going to chat a little bit about mine. I'm going to chat a little bit about my husband's to give you a little bit of story, and that probably could. And when you look at just even if they're not in the 4th and the 10th house, but just a Capricorn and Cancer axis, I mean, the Cancer North Node is about stepping into nurturing and not being so tyrannical. And then it's the opposite, because Cancer and Capricorn are very different. And ultimately, when we are in our shadow of our sun, we move into the worst parts of the opposite sign. So the whole South and North Node stuff, we want to, like I said last week in week 1, we want to balance out the good stuff, bring what we've learned. If you have a Capricorn North Node in this lifetime, you want to bring that Cancerian stuff. You want to be able to be empathetic and compassionate and nurturing, but you just don't want to be that no action and I don't feel like it, and really that sort of hibernating Cancerian, like the crab that runs into its shell. The Capricorn is here to lead. Oprah, man, it is Oprah. And what did she do? She didn't have kids. And I know that she had that child when she was a child herself, but she didn't step into motherhood, yeah? And she's nailing her North Node from very, very early on by not having children. But it doesn't mean that just because you've got children that you didn't nail your North Node. Look, I have my North and South nodes in the 10th and 4th house. So we'll get to that point, and then I'll tell you my journey. So let's start. North Node in the 1st, of course, what you're here to do is to be yourself, to step into your personal power, to take initiative, self-reliance, develop self-confidence, independence. Often people with North Node in the 1st houses, they stand out. There's something about them that stands out. They become a pioneer in a field, or, you know, in an endeavor or something that they're doing. They must take their own path in this life. So is this all ringing true? Of course. North Node in Aries and North Node in the 1st house. Very, very similar. Well, they're the same, but I still find that the house is the way where we're expressing it, because not everyone's going to have a North Node in Aries in the 1st house. If you do, you are like, whew, you are here, you are that axis personified. So I can't wait to hear if anyone's got their North Node and South Node in the houses that they're meant to be in, so at home in their houses. So of course, North Node in the 1st house is to carve your own destiny, is to walk your own way. Of course, this is where we express our North Node. So if your North Node is in Leo in the 1st house, it's about your individuality in carving your own path. So that would be a very powerful North Node. North Node in the 1st, any North Node in the 1st is, Libra would be the difficult one, right? Because Libra is all about is about the Libra North Node. You know, the Libra North Node is about caring and no competition and cooperation and harmony. But in the first house, it's about carving out your own destiny. So that's where I suppose the paradox of that particular one is about really understanding and knowing yourself and not suppressing your needs like the very Libran tendencies do, but to actually be really balanced and calm, not needing to be liked and accepted, to stand on your own, but with that beautiful, diplomatic, graceful way of being in the world as a Libra North Node. Yeah. North Node in the first is, of course, you're here for your own destiny. You must go deep into yourself to understand yourself, to steep yourself in sovereignty with your North Node in your first house. You must be, it's like the wake up. I feel like it is the wake up of the houses, like wake up, yeah? Wake up, become conscious, become aware. You are a physical person in a physical body. Also, because the first house is about your physical body, any North Node in the first house, no matter what sign, will probably take very good care of their physical body. And the thing is to not get lost in that, to not obsess, to not become vain, to not be a psycho when it comes to your body. It needs to be balanced. But the appearance is important to North Node first people. North Node in the first is there is a longing and a knowing to discover the self because you're moving away from the seventh house, yeah? You want to regain your identity and become a leader. So then we go to the South Node in the seventh, which is the opposite, too dependent in this lifetime, great at thinking of others, great at thinking for others. Again, what are we in? We're in the Libra house. So it is all about that cooperation, very good at harmony. So you've got those things and now you must pull away from that and become sovereign. South Node in the seventh in this lifetime must not rely on other people's opinions or acceptance or even advice. That's a really big thing for a South Node, seventh South Node Libra, is it not relying on other people to tell you who to be, to tell you who you are. So I find that South Node 7th there is a strong projection because we've got to remember the 7th house is about projections, what we bring in, what comes back to us, and also enemies, yeah? So for me, I wrote here, what you give back, what you give out, you get back in behaviours of other people. So you know, that is a big thing because, you know, a South Node 7th or South Node Libra can probably be repressed. So they've got all this stuff inside of them that they're not really saying to everyone because they're sort of in that people-pleasing mode because they're not sovereign enough to stand up and just say no. No is a full sentence. I don't have to give you an excuse. And if you don't like me because I've said no, you're not my friend. Yeah, like this is the lesson of this South Node in the 7th house. And I find that the projections, the projective side of things with this 7th house is quite big. What you are sort of giving out, you are getting back. And what you are seeing in other people that you want to be as well, like people that sort of stand up and be quite strong. You might feel a little intimidated by them or they sort of piss you off a bit, but it's because you're sort of wanting to be that. It's because of that repressed part of the South Node in the 7th South Node in Libra. It's that repressed part that you're needing to break out of to go, no, I can be clear and assertive and not repressed. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I just wrote here. South Node in the 7th, what they want, so they see in other people what they want to be, but this can keep them repressed and angry. So they must move away from that and obviously move into the North Node. So North Node in the 2nd house, well, it's going to be Venusian. Now, it's a North Node in the 2nd house is actually quite magical because they've got quite good manifesting money powers. Yeah, so if you're not in that, it means that you're too in your South Node in the 8th, okay? So ultimately, the North Node in the 2nd is all about relying on yourself, making your own money, making your own value systems, and developing your own resources, going inside to look at your inner values, creating a solid foundation, a solid material foundation, going into the core of yourself and really looking at your own worth, your self-worth, yeah? Also knowing that you're deserving of money. But the big thing with the North Node in the second is that it's about you making your own money and relying on yourself and building, sustaining, establishing, it's all Taurian, establishing a solid foundation within yourself, within your surroundings, yeah, within your financial status, and because it's Venusian, because it doesn't matter what sign it's in. If your North Node's in the second, it's a Venusian North Node as well. So there's this element of attracting power, so to speak, yeah, because it's a benefic. Yeah, Venus is a benefic, so it's quite beneficial to have your North Node in the second house. But then your South Node is in what? The 8th house, and then the South Node in the 8th house is moving away from relying on other people. That's the biggest thing, yeah? Because the North Node in the 8th house is you... Oh, sorry, I've just lost my notes. I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so the South Node in the 8th house, I've got notes everywhere. You know me. The South Node in the 8th house is you've relied too much on the spiritual. You've relied too much on sort of the occult and the deep. And we know it's the Scorpio, isn't it? It's the drama. It's the trauma. It's having to think that you've got to go underneath to sort of really bring everything up to the surface, when really you can go, the North Node in the second house is definitely your core and inner values, but without the trauma attached to it, without the drama to evolve. So that South Node in Scorpio or in the 8th house is moving away from other people's resources. It's a big thing. Well, if the North Node is about money, making money, you relying on your own resources, of course, the South Node is the opposite. It's about moving away from relying on other people, relying on their resources. Yeah. It's also about, I think, being confident, I feel being confident within yourself and not relying on other people to fill you up, because the 8th house is all about others, and it's all about spirituality in that different way, right? Because we're moving away from sort of the less spiritual, more practical sort of stuff. Again, 2nd house North Node, 8th house South Node, same as Taurus Scorpio, North and South Node, right? So again, we're trying to move away from just going, oh no, if I just, think about this and vision it, everything will just happen. It's like, well, it's not. You're poor. Nothing's happening for you. You've got no stability. It wants you to be stable in the physical world, yeah? I've got my notes written everywhere, so I just sort of lost my track then. North Node in the 3rd, so which is similar to North Node in Gemini, using the mind to analyze and to look at your life realistically. It's your everyday surroundings with the North Node in the 3rd house. It's about having to develop routine, that you must have a routine in your everyday life. Because ultimately North Node in the 3rd means South Node's in the 9th, and it's all about grander and bigger and grand ideas, and I want to escape reality, but what's the bigger picture? Whereas that's the lesson here, is the North Node wants you to look at your environment around you, create a routine, be realistic, and use your brain, be analytical. Be analytical. So it's not you're not going from open-minded with South Node in the 9th to narrow-minded. You're being focused. You're focused, you're centered, you're analyzing the situation at hand instead of just going, flimming over the details. You want to know the details with your North Node in the 3rd house. You must master the details. You must teach all that has been learned, because, of course, that South Node in the 9th house is the all knowledge guru. I know a lot. I've done all the quests. But now you're here to teach that, to speak that, because, of course, North Node in the 3rd, what is it? Communication. You're here to communicate, to teach, to learn, to study on a more grounded level, not in the higher, but in the grounded. The coolest thing I love about the North Node in the 3rd is this sentence that says, your greatest opportunities are the ones closest to you. So instead of thinking the grass is greener on the other side, because it's not, it's that your greatest opportunities and challenges and lessons are all the closest at hand. Yeah, they're all to do with your home, your everyday interactions, the short journeys, because what's the 3rd house? Short journeys, traveling up and down the coast. Someone with stuff in the 3rd house might be a postie. Yeah, someone who's a courier, a taxi driver. That's sort of the stuff we look at with the third house, yeah? So your greatest opportunities are the ones closest to you, not outside of your sphere and so far away. I love that. I think that's really important. And most people I've known with that North Node in the third are so like that. They're not willing to just take what's around them. They are looking for these big grand schemes, you know, oh no, this will work, this will happen, you know, this is going to happen. It's it's really amazing. So that North Node in the third asks you to focus on one thing at a time, become detailed orientated, research, relatives, neighbors, siblings. That's the house of relatives and neighbors and siblings. They're very helpful to North Node in the third people. They can, you know, maybe you've got North Node in the third and your neighbor has helped you in situations, or they've said something to you which sort of, you know, they suggested something to you and all of a sudden you were like, that's amazing, thank you, and then you went and studied it or something, right? Like this is what we're talking about here, is that North Node is your destiny. So to have it in the third house, it's these people that are around you, not in faraway lands, that are actually going to help you the most. You've got to move away from that, because if the South Node is in the ninth, that is that you've done all of the travel. You've traveled far and wide. You've collected knowledge, information. You are God. You are. I mean, the northern the third and ninth Sag and Gemini nodes. It's a cool one, and it's quite complex, I find, when I'm sort of really diving into it, because they're both mental, they're both about the mind and study and learning, but the Gemini and the third house is about bringing it down into the material, whereas the Sagittarius South Node is about the universal. Yeah, the universal mind. So ultimately the South Node in the ninth house is comfortable with traveling, and a lot of people with South Node in the ninth might still do a lot of traveling, but they're actually urged to come back. Stop seeking more information. Stop doing 8 million more courses. You've got a lot of knowledge, now teach it. You are a guru. I mean, everyone's a guru, let's be honest. But I mean, the third and ninth house and Sag Gemini stuff, I mean, that's guruistic. I mean, the axis, yeah? Often South Node in the ninth can find it easy to study and learn. So maybe at school it was really easy, or it can go one of two ways, or it could have just been really difficult because maybe they felt far beyond it and they couldn't concentrate, right? So ultimately, South Node in the ninth house has to let go of abstract thinking and grandeur and, it's the whole trees in the forest thing, similar to the Gemini Virgo stuff, I reckon, personally. When it comes to axis stuff, like the nodal axis, I find that it's similar to that whole Gemini Virgo thing, right? The Gemini is not, it actually should be caught up. Well, no, they're both sort of missing the thing, aren't they? I just sort of pulled myself up there. I'm like, no, because Virgo is the details. Gemini is the grander picture because it can skim over details. But I suppose with this axis in particular, that's where the Gemini needs to focus on the details. So they need to become more Virgoian, like their Mercurian brother of Virgo, right? Because the Sagittarian side of this axis is to do with grand ideas, grand visions. The grass is greener in the other country, and I'm going to go and visit it because what's around here is boring, yeah? But then having that North Node in the third house, it's like, no, but this is where your greatest opportunities lie. And if you keep seeking without and keep traveling and gathering more information and thinking in a really abstract way and communicating really complexity and, out there, being very Sagittarian know-it-all-ish with that South Node in the ninth, you're going to miss your greatest opportunities here. Yeah, it's cool. It's different, I reckon. Then we come to the North Node in the fourth. So again, of course, apart from the real estate thing, which was a cool little thing, so definitely about home and houses and definitely, yeah, well, when I read planets in the fourth house, it is about if people are more successful staying at home or if they're more successful leaving where they were born, if they can get more success and happiness from far away from their birthplace. So that sort of North Node fourth, I mean, the karma then is all around domesticity, family, children, the home, nurturing, cooking, feeding, but it's also the midnight part of the chart. So this is really interesting. I like this this north node 4th, south node 10th, and then the other way around when we get there, because the 4th node is the midnight part of the chart, remember? So if your north node there, it's not that it's hidden, but it's deep within. So what you have to do is grow your soul, whereas it's the other way around for the other guys. So with the north node in the 10th, you've grown your soul. You're now here to shine and step into your power. But with the north node in the 4th, you've had the power because you're letting go of the south node in the 10th. You're moving into the north node of the 4th. So you have to grow your soul. It's a very internal destiny. I think I wrote that it's a deep inner self destiny to be recognized. That's what I wrote. You have to dig deep. You have to go into the inner powers, the inner soul. There is very much more to someone than meets the eye with any planets in the 4th, but with the north node, and what needs to happen is the soul and the inner emerging of the karma needs to rise up. So it needs to sort of like surface. If your destiny is sort of dwelling down here in the 4th house, what have you got to do? You've got to become aware of it and move away from the south node, which is right up the top of the chart where everyone can see it. But you have to pull back down and go inside, go deep, go dark, and develop your soul. Get to know your soul. Yeah. Grow the soul. Your destiny is to be recognized and released. It has to be surfaced. It has to come up to the surface. So yes, of course, it's the path of nurturing the family. I wrote here that it's the path of meeting yourself, self-sustaining, deep destiny. I think for North Node in the 4th house, that's what I feel. And definitely moving away from the public, which is the South Node in the 10th. So the South Node in the 10th is too focused on the career. It's pulling away from the family, wants to be away from the family, wants to be a career person in the public. Ultimately, South Node in the 10th usually can depict fame in a past life. So they were famous. So they're used to recognition, reward, power, attention, right? So that South Node in the 10th is going, I'm used to being a star in a way. Yeah, not every single person would be famous with the South Node there, but, it's quite common for that to have happened. So that's the interesting thing. What the South Node in the 10th person does is they're just so comfortable being the leader, being dictatorial, standing in their power. I am here. Maybe it is about recognition and reward. I don't know. That'll be an individual thing, but that's what they're used to. And they now have to know and grow their soul because they know what that's all like. They've been there, done that. It's time to grow the soul with sovereignty. Yeah. So yes, South Node in the 10th, too authoritarian. There's a karmic duty to the family. If you have your South Node in the 10th, the karmic duty isn't to keep rising up, keep climbing that social ladder, keep getting higher, more money, more status, more public recognition. The karma is actually in the family. And if you don't have a family, well, you don't have a family. There will be something that will need to pull you back down. It might just be your soul. The karma is to your soul, who you are, your lineage maybe your parents, understanding your genealogy. You've got to look at the 4th house. It's all that stuff, tradition, genealogy, DNA, genetics. Yeah. So it's looking at all of these things. What is passed on? That's what I wrote here. Pay attention to the family. Look to the past. Look to the traditions. Yeah. South Node in the 10th, great. They're great managers. They're great at doing all of that stuff, and you want to hold on to that. Remember, it's about balancing the axis here. Remember, we're never just like leaving it behind. We're balancing it out, yeah? So moving away from the public and into the personal is probably the best way to say it, away from the public. So it's, if you don't have a family too. So because ultimately that axis is very much about career and home life. And I have that, but in the opposite way. So when we get to that, I'll share how that experience has been for me, because already you should know that my South Node would then be in my 4th, which means it's not about family for this life. And as you all know, I have a family. So I want to tell you sort of what I've done and how I've worked with that. So North Node in the 5th. This is a beautiful North Node, very similar to, of course, North Node in Leo, which is a positive, happy, optimistic North Node. Literally, like what I wrote here with the North Node in the 5th, your destiny is happiness. It is joy. That is your destiny here. So this is the destiny of creative self-expression, play, inner child, happiness, optimism, sport, recreational activities, leisure, fun. You have permission to have fun for yourself, because we know that the 5th house is about Leo and it is about self, because the opposite is the 11th, which is about the collective, right? So this is about you becoming self-sufficient, asking yourself, what brings me pleasure? If my North Node is in the 5th, what brings me pleasure? It's like you have nearly permission not to be a selfish asshole, but to actually be a little bit more selfish, because you've actually done everything for humanity in your past life. It is time for you to do for yourself. It's very different. And let's look at it. I mean, Aries, fire, self. Leo, fire, self. Saggy, fire, self. I find all the fire signs very, like I said in mod 1, I find the fire signs get along really well with each other because they all understand that they're all a little bit selfish and self-absorbed. So they all sort of just are really good with that. And because I've got one planet in fire, and my North Node, so I've got a planet and North Node in fire, it has always been actually quite a challenge for me. But I've got an Aries descendant, so I have had to acknowledge that and not repress that. Yeah, I've had to allow that to come in and see where I can step into that a little bit more without going, oh, you're so selfish and oh, it's always about you. And then sort of actually step up sometimes and shine it about me, and be okay with that as well. Because the cool thing I love about one of my best friends is an Aries, and we're just so cool with each other. Like, she can say something and I'll go, okay, or if that triggered, or, it's a really courageous and deep friendship, because Aries are about themselves, so they're always sort of looking out for themselves, and this affected me and how this affected me. So I've been able to learn off of her and then speak up if I need to, because the Libra ascendant can be a little repressed because I'm a peacekeeper. I'm a natural lover, not a fighter. So that's the thing. This is where you start to bring all of mod 1 into your mod 2 as well, and into your life. But I think that I watch my best friend who's an Aries, and she's got quite a few other fire sign friends as well, and they're all like that, and it's great. They all just get along so well, and it's really brought the fun out in me to go, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't have to be so serious or inhibited or scared that I'm going to upset someone. If I go, oh no, I don't think I'm like that, or oh no, and I've been able to do that a little bit more, which has been. Takes courage, and yeah, I've really started to embrace the descendant, which I urge you to really have a good relationship with your descendant and what you're attracting in, because that is the attracting stuff, right? But in this life, if your North Node is the 5th, it can be about you. You need to ask, what brings me pleasure? What do I desire to do or be or feel or have, right? Children. Because the 5th house is the house of children, even though the 4th house is the house of home and kids, but home. But the 5th house is about children. So children can bring a lot of fulfillment to North Node in the 5th house, people. You must be led by your own self, led from the heart. It is the path of the heart. The 5th house is heart, yeah? So I'm going to actually just quickly go to the bathroom. And I think I can pause this. So let's pause this and see if it works. Oh, I love this new computer. I can just pause it. That is so good. So yes, North Node. So I was just thinking on the toilet, I was like, yeah, like the North Node in the top half of the chart is definitely about not just service, but like here to grow and evolve and be in the public, and and anything below the surface is about self and material and bringing everything down. Like, you've already done the top half of the chart, and now you're here to bring that down to the bottom. So people who have got North Node in the top half of the chart have already done the bottom half of the chart. It's time for them to bring that out. Yeah. So so like I said, the North Node is the heart. It's the heart. Often a lot of entertainment people in the entertainment industry have their North Node in their 5th because it's the house of performers and drama and singing and dancing and musicals and theatre and all that sort of stuff, yeah? So maybe if your North Node is in the 5th, you're interested in those things, and you've got to do it, but you might be holding back because of the South Node. I wrote here, flirty, fun, and frivolous. Be led from your heart, become self-sufficient, develop your own self, listen to your own heart, have fun. Like I said, it's all about play. So that means that the South Node is in the 11th. So it's about leaving behind. What I've written here is the pack, collective, and group mentality. That pack mind, that group mind, that mentality of the collective, right? So leave behind the collective. Don't be led by the collective. That's the thing here. So maybe you do have your North Node in the 5th, and you would love to sing or dance or something, but you only do it in a group because you feel safe, you feel comfortable in a group. Of course, that's your South Node playing out, right? You've done that. You are comfortable in a group situation. It's about you stepping up and maybe getting to the front of that dance group or becoming the lead in that play, yeah? And that's why that whole North Node in the 5th is about going, well, what do I want to do? What makes me feel good? I feel like the North Node in the 5th house is that whole law of attraction thing that we talk about with Esther and Jerry Hicks. And they just say the only purpose in our life is to feel good. So not in a crazy way, but that's what it is. So I think that North Node in the 5th, it is about you this lifetime. So what we are leaving behind is the dependence on relying on friends and hiding in groups, like I just said. Your goals, desires, and ideas are too focused in the group setting. Like, because you're naturally humanitarian already because you've done the whole 11th house stuff, right? Same as this is all Aquarius Leo, isn't it? You're seeing how it all plays in. So you've done all of that. You are a humanitarian. You can still be, but now you've got to actually live for yourself. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, goals, desires, ideals are too focused on groups, on the collective, so you must turn these into your own goals, your own personal ideas and goals and dreams that you want for yourself. You might, if you've got the South Node in 11th, feel like you have a sense of power within groups, so that would make it feel comfortable to stay there because you're sort of, there's quite a lot of power that you've got within the group, but again, it's about moving away from the group, stop hiding in the group, let going of the need to rely on being accepted by people, relying on the friends to lift you up and tell you everything. That whole find your tribe and love them hard, pull away from that shit. It is time to express yourself as an individual. North Node in the 6th. This is about service. Serving others will fulfill you, and it's service without recognition, because the Virgo Pisces 6th house, 12th house polarities is interesting too. It's a bit of a paradox because they're both about service, but one is collective and universal and like no boundaries. It's Neptunian, it's 12th house. But the 6th house service, the Virgo service, is practical. It's doing acts of service in the practical, realistic way. The North Node in the 6th house person will feel that they can isolate themselves, that they can retreat, because that's the 12th house. The South Node is in the 12th house. It's easy for them to just want to be by themselves, seclusion, but they must come out of their shells. They must come out of hibernation and work in this lifetime. That is North Node in the 6th. You must work, like have a vocation, yeah, or you will feel hopeless. You will feel helpless. You'll be feeling not great. Yeah. You must take action and develop routine in your world because, of course, what's the South Node in the 12th is all illusion and dreams and, dropping away from reality. North Node in the 6th is like a reality call. Like it's wake up, check in. And so having a routine and having ritual and the everyday service stuff is really important. I just look at my husband's sun. It's a Capricorn sun in the Virgo house and a Capricorn Mercury in the Virgo house in the 6th. And I mean, it's so much about mundane, routine, ritual service. You know, it's the everyday stuff that he's good at. He gets it. And he's actually got his south node in his 6th house. So that's interesting, yeah? We'll talk about that in a minute. But north node in the 6th, you must merge with others and resist the sort of unconscious feeling of wanting to have and create separation, because the 12th house is all about isolation, being by yourself, meditation, all of those sorts of things. You're here to be with people, merge with people. That is Virgoian. They are here to help people. Every Virgo I know is like a facialist or someone who works on the yard, like an agriculturist or a landscaper. They're people doing something for other people. I mean, I know that we all are in some way, but a Virgo has this real pure, service-orientated way of being. They literally feel like that is their duty. It's like a duty, right? So north node in the 6th. So the thing is that it must not be sacrificial service, like not sacrificing yourself to serve others. And that's where the whole Pisces stuff sort of comes in. So the biggest thing is to develop that routine in the world. And I call it the everyday enlightenment stuff. You know, I mean, I say that about a lot of things, but the 6th house stuff is everyday enlightenment. For enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. How Virgoian is that? After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. That's what you're doing. It's the same. So that to me, it's about service. You keep doing what you keep doing. You have a routine. You have structure. You have a ritual. Yeah? So then that means the south node is in the 12th. So if you've got the south node in the 12th, you must move beyond the subconscious activity. Yeah? So because the 12th is the house of the hidden, it can be scary. There can be fears and phobias, nightmares, terrors. It's like the dark room of the house, different to the 4th and different to the 8th. We know they're the 4 water houses, so we know that they're the darkest, deepest sort of houses, right? But the 12th house is that isolation. It's asylums. It's wanting to get away from reality. Reality hurts me too much, so I'm going to escape it, yeah? So having your south node there, it means you must come out of hiding. You can't seclude yourself anymore. You can't be separate. Even though you feel at one with the divine, which is beautiful, but you've been there, you're now here to bring that into acts of everyday life. South node in the 12th, people can be too self-sacrificial. Again, they must move beyond their fears, their addictions, their phobias, come out of hiding. It's like turning the light on. So the 12th house is, especially with south node in the 12th house, everything's scary because it's dark, and then you just flick the switch and then you can see everything and everything becomes clear, yeah? So south node in the 12th house people have lots of spiritual tendencies, of course. They're Neptunian by nature, by past life. They probably still like lots of time and meditation and quiet and stuff like that, but they have to really pull themselves out of that. They can love fantasy, being alone with the universe. They're very comfortable being in dreamland, but that actually keeps them trapped in their own mind world. Because what is Virgo? Practical, here, service, duty. It's what I'm here to do. So we must pull from that south node into that north node of the 6th. Yeah, so ultimately too, yeah, like I said, nightmares can be possible because, of course, that's the house of dreams. South node in the 12th, people can have a low self-esteem. Like a lot of those, you know, a lot of the starving artists, I would say south node in the 12th. So, oh no, I'm spiritual, so I just give away all of my shit for free. They're poor. They're probably well, I know some of these people. So they're going through a lot of stuff. They're addicts. They do all of this stuff, but they're spiritual and they give all of their stuff away for free. I can guarantee that their south node is in their 12th house because they don't value themselves. They don't think that they're enough. They don't know, well, actually, I'm going to charge you $100 an hour because of my worth, because I know what I'm worth, because I know I've done 20 years of whatever it is I've been doing, and it is worth it for that person to come to me. So that is where, hello, they have to pull out of that south node and come into the north node of Virgo, being not self-sacrificial, knowing their enoughness, serving, which will bring them fulfillment, because it does. The north node's south node, Pisces, Virgo Pisces, 6th, 12th, 12th, 6th, very much is, they are the servers of life, aren't they? It's all about serving, but there's just those nuances of the differences, right? Yeah. Neptune, Pisces, love, unconditional love. It is self-sacrificial, no boundaries. It knows no limits. Virgo, grounded, mutable, changeable, of course, but grounded, realistic, focused on acts of service. Yeah. So South Node in the 12th must move away from that staying in their own mind, that not good enoughness. Oh, I'll give away all of my powers for free. No, they've got to move into the real world and into moving into that. No, this is what's the 6th house? It's work. It's everyday work. It's where you drive every day. So if it's your own business, it's going to be very easy for those South Node, North Node spiritual people to just be caught up in that South Node. And I know so many people who do that. It's very interesting to me. Where are we at? Up to the 7th. North Node in the 7th. South Node in the 1st now. So North Node in the 7th, here for relationships. Like I've said, any planet in what I believe in the 6th and the 7th houses, there's karma around health in the 6th and relationships in the 7th. Of course, the 12th house is karmic, so there's always karma that's got to do with the 12th house planets. But with the North Node in the 7th house, you are here to relate. That is what you are here to do. Your mission is to learn to relate. And relate is the first little bit of relationships. Relationships has the word relation in them. We are constantly relating. So the North Node in the 7th is all about relationships, leaving the self behind. All partnerships, all relationships will be of utmost importance. There is karma around relationships. So North Node in the 7th, people have to move away from that selfishness of I know who I am, I'm sovereign, I'm independent, because then their South Node's in the 1st, isn't it? So they know all of that stuff that we spoke about earlier. I'll still talk about it, but so they're now coming into, oh no, now I must be like equal and balanced and actually in all of my relationships, I'm going to learn something because, again, what's the 7th house? Projections, enemies. So the 7th house is a learning to relate. It's also building connections with other people, overcoming repression and suppression of your own needs, your own soul's desires. Ultimately what you're trying to do is maintain a sense of your own soul's desires whilst merging with a partner. You don't have to lose yourself to be in a relationship. But again, this whole 1st and 7th, it's difficult for relationships in general, whether you've got your North Node in your 1st or your North Node in your 7th or your South Node or your Aries Libra. It's difficult because it's all about relationships. And what do we always try? What are we all doing? We've got a relationship with ourselves. We've got a relationship with our mum, our dad, our siblings, the person at the post office. It's the constant relationship. So the North Node in the 7th is karma around the relationship. So learning about yourself through the relationships, yeah? So then your South Node is in the 1st. Too independent, too alpha. Move from the self to others. Let go of the ego. Give yourself away. Help others. Merge yourself with other people. Ultimately, Sun in the South Node in the 1st house may feel isolated, lonely, prefers their own company. But there's no growing alone with South Node in the 1st house, yeah? There's no growing alone. The only way you can grow with the South Node in the 1st house is in relationships, is to relate to others. I don't mean you have to be married, but there needs to be really reciprocated relationships where you're not the dominant, assertive, aggressive, powerful, potent, too independent, too alpha person, yeah? You must relate. South Node in the 1st loves their own company, like I said, but must live their life for others this time. Must listen and be open to others and have a love for others. So that's what you're developing with your South Node in the 7th. North Node in the 8th. This, I sort of didn't talk about sex much, but the 8th house, so the 5th house is flingy sex, right? It's flirty sex, it's fun sex, it's casual sex, really. The 8th house is sex. Like it is like Pluto, like sex, love, I just want to like that sort of stuff. So the North Node in the 8th can actually really open you up sexually, help you to let go and to be completely inhibited with your partner, because with the South Node in the 2nd, you could feel, again, because what is it about? It's about self-worth. So you're not feeling good enough, or you're not feeling free enough to just be wild. So ultimately the North Node in the 8th is very much about opening this destiny up to your own sacred sexuality container. Okay, I'll just leave that one with you. North Node in the 8th house is someone who's transforming, metamorphosis, sharing resources. Maybe you get an inheritance. Maybe you're good with other people's money. You're good at handling other people's money. Maybe your North Node is literally that you have a husband who earns really good money and you don't have to work for money. You might work for fun or have your own business, but money isn't really a problem because it's shared resources. Like you've got this constant resource coming in. Maybe some of those what are those sugar daddy girls? Maybe they've got North Node in the 8th house because they go to the sugar daddy and they're being taken care of. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that, North Node in the 8th house could very much be because it's someone sort of holding your resources. Look, I've got a lot of planets in my 8th house, which means that I'm so the interesting thing is let's look at the houses, right? I've got a lot of planets. I've 4 planets in my 8th house. My husband has always worked full time. Yeah, I have stayed at home. I've actually, I've always worked, but very, especially minimally with the kids because our priority, we put the children first, and I've never had to put them in care, and I was there with them every single day. I pick them up from school. I drop them off to school. I'm there every morning. I'm there every afternoon. That's just something that is for me. I'm just like, I am a Cancerian moon. I am a heavy Taurus. I am a supreme nurturer and matriarch. I love my family very much. So for me, that's the way I show it. Other people show it. Other women have to work, and that's how they show it, by contributing. And again, there's absolutely nothing's right or wrong. But I find that it's very interesting because that 8th house is about shared resources, and my husband has always supported that. Like, he has always had the full-time job. And even if I've been working, I was working at a crystal shop for one day a week, or I've had my business and I'll do workshops. But again, everything that I do is around my children, whereas my husband's been that primary caregiver, so as in financially. So it's very interesting. But then the complexity of that is I have Uranus in my 2nd house, so I make money in different ways. I'm not a traditional person who goes to work, come home, 9 to 5, all that. I mean, I could never do that. I would want to actually slice my throat. That is just not me. So here's the duality of it, is that I've got the shared resources stuff, but I make my own money, and it's Uranian, in a Uranian way. What does Uranus rule? Astrology. Where is it? In my money house. Like, hello, you can't make this shit up. Anyway, so that's why the North Node in the 8th is shared resources, inheritances maybe. So maybe, there's a big inheritance that got left with someone with the North Node in the 8th. The North Node in the 8th is about going deep, looking beyond the physical, mastering the soul. We want to metamorphose. We want to transform. And ultimately, it's about sharing. So the North Node in the 8th house is all about sharing. So you will only be successful if you share your resources, if you share your wealth, if you share your knowledge. And I suppose, again, look at all my 8th house planets, and that's what I do. I share everything. I gather information, and I just want to impart it so people have wisdom and can understand themselves better and know who they are. So when you share, you succeed. North Node in the 8th, because the paradox of that is South Node in the 2nd, which wants to hold on to everything. It's possessive. It's about the money. It's about material belongings. It's about, I'm possessive of my possessions. That South Node in the 2nd house, I wrote, let go, don't hold on. So money isn't everything. Holding on will cause you harm. So South Node in the 2nd is also good at to really start to master the 8th house, 2nd house, North and South Node, helping people feel worthy and good about themselves, helping other people. So again, what is it? It's about sharing and not holding on. So with the South Node in the 2nd house, it's very easy to go, this is mine, everything's mine, mine. It's all about money. It's all about work. It's all about being really structured, really focused, not being really rigid. It's Venusian, yeah. It's stuck like the bull. So in the shadow, right? To know that money isn't everything. Also, South Node in the 2nd can denote someone who's greedy and hoardy, and maybe a child who never wanted to share their shit. Ultimately, with the South Node in the 2nd, you must give up wanting more stuff because your North Node is in the 8th. It's about know yourself, know your soul. South Node in the 2nd is about creating and building a new relationship with money because the North Node in the 8th is where it's pulling you. It's about sharing, being resourceful, being helpful, helping other people, you know, sharing your wealth, sharing everything. So I think that, you know, that's where you need to be, obviously. It's where you need to be going with this polarity here, share. Yeah, and ultimately South Node in the 2nd, because of this sharing sort of, there is a positive influence with the 8th house, is that, like I said, it's about helping people feel worthy, helping people in general, and actually becoming a positive influence in other people's lives. That's a really positive thing that can come out of that axis. North Node in the 9th. Again, it's the guru stuff. What is it? It's Sagittarius. North Node in the 9th. Foreign travel. Must travel. Because the South Node in the 3rd, what's it want to do? Keep you in your everyday environment. Okay, it's just all very opposite, isn't it? Everything's very opposite. So the North Node, the 9th, wants you to be uncomfortable, push away from your normal, push away from only driving up the coast and down the coast, freaking catch a flight interstate, catch a flight overseas. Foreign travel is very, very good for the soul with North Node in the 9th house because it grows them. It expands their mind. It expands their knowledge. It is the guru. It's a wonderful place for the North Node to be. Very positive, very benefic, you know. It's the, you know, what are we looking at here? Benefic, right? So we've got North Node in the 2nd house, benefic, North Node in the 9th house, Jupiter, Venus. Travel is very good for the soul. This is all about writing, publishing, speaking, being a professor, being a teacher, someone who probably, you know, maybe goes back to uni and studies to, you know, do masters upon masters. So that's really good. You can stay in the education if you've got your North Node in the 9th. That's cool, and study lots and do lots as long as you're imparting that, as long as you're teaching that. Maybe you're a published author, or maybe you want to be, yeah. Often people with the North Node the 9th can speak fluent languages as well. Like, that's a really big thing. Because, again, what's the 3rd? The 3rd is Gemini, though. It's communication. So there's this real thing about linguistics when it comes to the 9th and 3rd house, Sage and Gemini axis. Yeah, the North Node, you're here to open up spiritually, to go on a spiritual quest. Who am I? What am I doing in this world? And if you stay in that 3rd house, South Node, well, all you're doing is picking up the kids, driving them to school, coming home, drinking coffee, picking up the kids, driving them back home. You're not doing anything. You're not expanding. You're not expanding your horizons, yeah? That's what you're doing. It's about looking at the big picture. It's about that quest to know self, to master thyself. It's about religion. Yeah, a lot of religious leaders have North Node or Sun in the the 9th house. They have a lot of 9th house stuff going on. Leaders in their fields, gurus, masters. Yeah. So North Node in the 9th, explore your inner curiosity. There's lots of inner growth to be had. South Node in the 3rd, must open the mind, travel, broaden the horizons. Like I said, not be stuck doing the same mundane, everyday, routine activities. Learn to have faith, find inner devotion, because, of course, if your South Node's in the 3rd, you're too analytical. You're not trusting in the bigger picture. You're too caught up in just what's going on around you. And often, as in the opposite with the North Node in the 3rd, with the relatives, siblings, and neighbours, sometimes with South Node in the 3rd, you might have trouble with your siblings or your relatives, your aunts and uncles. Maybe there's drama around that, yeah? So I would love to hear any feedback around that. South Node in the 3rd, great communication skills, but just too focused on the mental, the intellectual, not open to new ideas, not wanting to change the mind, just not open, not going, yeah, okay, that's something new, that's something I can open into, not just, but it's just here, yeah, it's in the mind. I can't describe it. I can't put what it means because it has to be intellectualized. So letting go of that and becoming more open in your faith. Yeah, must learn to trust the heart, to trust life, to trust the universe, South Node in the 3rd, and loves data and facts and is analytical and has a very practical mind, yeah? North Node in the 10th. what is this? This is me. I have my North Node in Leo in the 10th. So I find that quite an easy one to explain. Some of them I do find a very paradox. I really do. I'm like, I can't, getting my head around it. It takes a lot because, of course, I have Neptune in my 3rd house in Sag, Mercury in my 8th house in Gemini. So there's my little paradoxy, right? I'm a skimmer. I'm constantly seeking, wanting more. I speak spiritual language, Neptune in the 3rd. I speak about spiritual things. I teach about spiritual things. It's my destiny. But then my mercurial mind just wanders and goes off and tangents and goes crazy. But I find my North Node, but I know it. And that's why I love astrology. It's all experiential. We can all share something. But what you're going to teach me is how your nodes work out, how your node in the house and node in the sign really plays out for you. Like, that's what I love learning, is learning more off other people because they're experiencing it. I can only experience my chart. Joel can only experience his chart. You can only experience your chart. We can't experience other people's charts for them, which means we can't tell them who they are and what they are. We can help them to remember when we're sort of looking at their charts and stuff, but it's still not just black and white like that. Mars in the 1st house is Mars in the 1st house, but hey, what if there's lots of hard aspects, or what if there's lots of good aspects, or what if, there's an asteroid there? Like, there's a million different things. I think that's why my mind loves this shit, because I'm so mercurial that I keep every day I am in it. Reading, I've just ordered 3 more books, excited to get them this week. Anyway, North Node in the 10th, this is me. This is about fulfillment in my career, getting onto the public stage, moving away from the family, shining. It is a big purpose, just like a Leo North Node is. A Leo North Node, like I said last week, it's a big purpose because it's about shining. And mine is in my 10th house, and the 10th house is a big purpose because the North Node in the 10th is like, this is what I am here to do, is my career. This is it. My career, being on stage, going global, being in the public eye, about my reputation, being a leader, having power. This is all North Node in the 10th house, right? You're becoming your own authority, and the fulfillment comes from standing in your career. That's where the fulfillment comes. And it is like every time I stand on stage or I do this work, I'm like, I'm at home. So I'm at home, right? I'm actually work from home too, which is even funnier. So the South Node in the 4th is what we're moving away from. The soul has developed. We did that last life. We know who we are. We know our inner powers. We know our inner urgings and inklings, and we have developed the soul. Now we must step out and shine. There is, of course, an element of wanting to retreat, and I also have Saturn in my 12th house, so it's very big for me. I have a very big paradox of wanting to step up, but also I'm such a introvert, and I would prefer my own company, and I can just sort of hibernate, and I want to retreat a lot, and and I've got this North Node in Leo and North Node in the 10th house, but then I've got South Node in the 4th house and Saturn in the 12th, which is going, but just being over here in this little bubble's good, and being by myself, and very interesting, the many layers to us, right? But the South Node in the 4th, if you're here with me, and you've also got South Node in the 4th, you must give yourself to the public. You must come out and be in the public eye and not withdraw and not retreat. Your career will give you fulfillment. You must live for yourself and not live for your family. You must move away from the family, not cling to the family, not cling to the home, and let that be what you're about. Because, of course, what's it sort of similar to? It's probably sort of similar to the whole Cancerian axis, right? Well, it is. Obviously, it's a Cancerian house. The fulfillment doesn't come through children. There can be parental karma as well. So, karma around parents, which is totally true for me. Look, I've got my South Node in my 4th house, which is mother. Some astrologers say father as well. But the South Node in the 4th house, and, my mum gave me up. So there's definitely karma around that. And my South Node's in Aquarius, and she has 6 or 7 planets in Aquarius. So there was strong karma around me and my mother. And the big thing with me is I feel like I've very much balanced. I've been balancing my North and South Nodes the whole time I've been a mum. I've never sacrificed, given up who I am to be my girl's mum. I am teaching them to be a woman with passion, with heart, with direction, and with purpose. I would I can't be any other way. I'm not a victim sort of mother. I'm not a martyr. My kids can make their own lunches. They have for a long time. You know, they can clean their own rooms. They can get themselves organised for breakfast. I'm not a martyr, and I think that that's where the North Node for me has always been very strong. I'm a very independent person. I pretty much had to I didn't raise myself, but I sort of did, you know, like I got myself organised. I'm just very independent. I'm very self-sufficient. I don't need other people to do things for me. Sometimes it's nice, but it's not a necessity. So I'm going to, of course, raise my children to be independent and not codependent. And I suppose having the South Node in the 4th for me, I've been able to master that quite early. Obviously, I've been a mother for 20 years, so I got to move into motherhood at the age of 16. So for me, yes, I sacrificed, of course, but I don't really feel like I did, like in layman's society terms maybe, but not in my heart I didn't, because I've been doing my work. I've never stopped doing my work. I've never stopped building me, growing me, going to seminars, workshops, going on retreats with Brandon Bays, going and following the Dalai Lama around for a week when my eldest was 2.5. Like, I didn't put my life on hold. And that's where I find that whole mothering thing, that's where the whole martyr victim thing, I can't because I've got kids. Well, you can, and you're choosing not to. So let's be more empowered around being mothers and not saying I can't. Of course, do we have to have choices and sacrifice? Of course, I can't go to every single thing. I'd never be with my family. And I love my family. And I think that's where the balance has happened for me. And that I can really, I can work with that balance really quite well because A, I know myself, and B, I've been doing astrology for a very long time. So I get this around myself. And it's always the courage for me to step up and to meet my purpose out in the 10th house, right? And my North Node is is a few degrees away from my moon, in a different sign, but still a few degrees away from it. So I still count that as a conjunction. And and what do? It's about nurturing the collective. As strong as I am, I'm a pussycat, and I am literally, my North Node's in Leo. I'm a fucking big pussycat, and I want to hold space for people. And I also have Ceres, which is the asteroid, which is like Cancerian, which is like the nurturing mother. So I have Ceres in Cancer on top of my Cancer moon, an exact conjunction. So this whole matrix, and all in the 10th house. So it's like, I want to hold the world and just please know who you are. That's my deepest wish and joy and legacy. I just want everyone to know who they are and live for themselves, of themselves, with authenticity and truth and reverence and sovereignty and grounded commitment, and just say this is what I am here for. I declare this, yeah? So that's my little, obviously I could talk for another 68 hours on it, but that's my little bit of my own North and South Node and how it works for me. And it will work differently for everyone because we're all so different, and that's why I love us all. That's why I love astrology. 2 to go, guys. Look, 1 hour 30. Let's do this. North Node in the 11th. So this time, the North Node in the 11th and the South Node in the 5th. That means that the North Node in the 11th, you are here for the collective consciousness, to raise the vibration, to become a humanitarian and move away from playing and having fun. You can still have fun, but that South Node in the 5th will might make you keen to stay down there, because there's what did we talk about North Node in the 5th? Fun, freedom, recreation, leisure, sex, flirting, happiness, yeah? But the North Node in the 11th, you've got to pull towards this. It's about society and you being fulfilled with the collective consciousness. That's what will fulfill you. Your friendships will fulfill you more than your children. That's always hard to say, because the 4th and the 10th is similar, because it's about career. So your career and what you are here to be and do, because it's the top of the chart, right? That will fulfill you more than staying at home. And as much as I've been a stay-at-home mum, because all of my children, like I said, I'm here every morning, every night. I don't miss a thing. But the thing is that I've always balanced that out with my own stuff and working for myself and traveling and all the sort of stuff that's coming to me now more, yeah? Whereas North Node in the 11th and South Node in the 5th, children and friends, often the North Node in the 11th will find more fulfillment in their friendships. for more fulfillment in groups and going around and, you know, bringing people together. A lot of people with the 11th house stuff, I find they do like circle work or maybe women's work, or men's work even. But it's all about the collective, like bringing people together. So friends will be important to the North Node in the 11th house, and friends will also bring help. Like friends are very good at being beneficial to people with the North Node in the 11th. Like you use your friends, because not use them, but you utilize them because they will help you to achieve your goals and your dreams and your aspirations and your ideals. Your friendships are very important. Society and the collective is important for you. North Node in the 11th is universal and spiritual integration, wants a better world, someone who wants a better world, who wants to change things, desires a sense of community, you know. The North Node in the 11th must move into that space of community, you know, humanitarian, opening up, wanting a better world. So I think that the paradox here is that, I mean, the difference between the other is that the North Node in the 11th is about wanting a better world and not wanting a better me, whereas the opposite way around is that you've had the better world and now it's about me, yeah? North Node in the 11th, like I said, they bring people together for the greater good. So lots of esoteric groups, anything progressive, eccentric, electric, inventive, because what is it? It's Uranian, yeah? It's Uranian. It's the Aquarian stuff, right? So it's all this electric sort of stuff, and obvious, and even politics, you know, a lot of politics sort of stuff is 11th house as well. And often North Node in the 11th house, and a lot of 11th house placements fight for a cause. You know, they're those sort of more rallying sort of people. And as I've always said, I'm a lover, not a fighter. And even if I have a passion or you know, I believe in something, I don't ever feel like I need to fight for that belief. I just believe it and get along with my life, and I don't need other people to believe it as well, or other people to support me, or other people to tell me I'm right, or have a big pack of people like picketing. Like, that's just so not me. But I've got nothing in my 11th house, right? So my 11th house is ruled by Leo, so again, it's quite a selfish 11th house. It's like, oh, I'm here for myself. Yeah, you know, I don't need to go in a group. I don't need to convince anyone that I'm right or that immunization is wrong. Like, I don't need to do all of these things that everyone wants to do on Facebook every 3.5 minutes. I just live my own life. I just reckon how to be successful, focus on your own shit. But of course, that's going to be easy for me because I don't have that stuff. But people with North Node in their 11th, this is where there is no right or wrong. It's easy for me to wallow off and say all the stuff I just did, but that makes sense to me. But the thing is that people with stuff in their 11th house are just like, they just look at me like I'm crazy. Like, how could you not fight for that? How could you not want to share that? How could you not want to do that? And it's just not in me, literally not in me. Not that I don't believe you and I actually agree with you, but I just don't have that urge, right? So the North Node in the 11th may have that urge to fight for something. 9th house people are often like that too. And guess what? I've got nothing in my 9th house. Because 9th house is all about beliefs and can be very dogmatic, yeah? Wanting to push those beliefs onto other people. Then, South Node in the 5th. South Node in the 5th, if the North Node is in the 11th, you must leave the ego behind. Less self, more collective. There is past karma around love and romance, ultimately with the South Node in the 5th house, because that is the romantic house. That's the meeting people, mingling. It's not relationships and marriage, but it's that whole casual sort of sex and romance. So there can be karma around love and meeting people and romance there. South Node in the 5th mustn't live for self, must live for the collective, can't live for fun. And often if they're in that space and they're not moving towards their North Node, they reject responsibility. They just want to have fun, go out with their mates, which is an 11th house thing, but in a different way, because they want the whole casual, instant gratification stuff is what I'm talking about, yeah? They've got to grow up in this lifetime. And less self, more collective, less self, more humanity, leaving the world a better place. I think, what did I do? I write that? Maybe I wrote it in the notes. Yes, South Node in the 5th, like I said, friendships are more satisfying than children. That is the children house. Must give up sort of that casual sex, stop seeking pleasure, gambling with their everything. They have to move toward the higher realms, the higher cause, yeah? Because the 5th house is very self-gratifying, yeah? Also with South Node in the 5th house, people, I actually feel society's pressure to have children, and don't. You know, you don't have to. If you're not there yet, and that's you watching this, don't feel like you have to have children, because that's what I think about Oprah. Her South Node is in Cancer, and she didn't have a family, and she very well could have. Yeah, she very well could have, and she didn't. She really started to, you know, master that North Node in Capricorn very early in her life. Let's do our last one, cherubs. North Node in the 12th. So this is my husband and my eldest daughter. They both have this. So what they are here to do is become spiritual. And didn't they choose the right person to hang out with? I tell you. They need to unite with the divine, become conscious of the unconscious. Yes, make the unconscious conscious. That's a big thing, because, of course, if their South Node is in the 6th house, it's very much about work and the mundane and earning them dollars and doing the same old stuff, which they're very good at, right? North Node in the 12th is about meditating, the destiny to dive deep into their own selves, expand their spirituality. The 12th house North Node is like getting off the karmic wheel, because your North Node is in that 12th house, the final house of the zodiac. It's about karmic evolution, that you are here to evolve, that you are here. I wrote it's the karma of enlightenment in this life. Yep, I'm going to own that little one. You're clearing your karmic debt here with your North Node in the 12th house. Your destiny is to deepen your spiritual awareness, to find the tools to do that, to find quiet time. So I've written here, will desire and require quiet space and solitude to find themselves, to know themselves, to meditate, to go beyond the material, the physical, the mundane, to go to that connection with the cosmos, that connection with the universe. Have faith in the universe, trust in the universe. Can be very, very clairvoyant and very psychic. So it's a very cool North Node, I reckon. I think it is, especially if you can start mastering and moving away from the South Node in the 6th, which is someone very comfortable with working hard, being in service, acts of service, doing the daily, everyday, mundane, ritualistic things. The North Node in the 12th person, South Node in the 6th must move away from that and not put so much emphasis on that. I'm not saying quit your job and just go and be a monk. If you can do that, you can. But the thing is that it's like you bring that everyday enlightenment into your everyday life, and it doesn't have to be around, you know, being a workaholic. Yeah. And mustn't lose the self in serving with the South Node in the 6th, like in that mundane, again, becoming a workaholic, like losing who they are and their divine. That's why we balance out the nodes and their axis in house and sign. We balance them. South Node in the 6th is asking, don't get stuck in the daily routines. Yeah, make sure you still open up. Maybe every day it's that you meditate before you go to work, or you chant on the weekend, or you do some really beautiful, sacred, ceremonial, ritualistic, spiritual, devotional practices, bringing those in if your South Node is in the 6th, because of course you're still working and providing and serving. That's cool, but you don't want to lose your divinity spark of soul, because that is what you are here to achieve if your North Node is in the 12th, yeah? South Node in the 6th is also, getting comfortable with the routine, so using everyday rituals like I just suggested, and overcoming health issues and worries and anxieties. So often South Node in the 6th can, maybe not be hypochondriacs, but there's something wrong, and then they sort of attach themselves to the disharmony and the negative emotions, and then the physicality. Oh, that hurts. Oh, this hurts. And my oldest daughter is so in that. There is always something wrong with her. She's always sick. She has to have her tonsils removed, and again, it just becomes this sort of attachment to the physical, whereas North Node in the 12th, what is it about? It's about sort of not leaving the physical, but actually ascending from the physical. You're more than this. So there can be that sort of psychosomatic, tendencies, something's wrong with me, a little bit hypochondriac. And Zenny is always, you know, she'd get a mozzie bite when she was a little girl and she'd bawl. And it's not like she's allergic to them or anything. So, and her pain threshold is like, we went for tattoos on her 18th birthday. No. She was just off the chain. 2 tiny tattoos, and she was like holding on to me and absolutely sobbing. Her pain threshold is nothing. And so if she could start to master her North Node and detach from her physical and detach from health issues, health problems, she will then, because the North Node in the 6th can learn from a health issue. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned that. But the North Node in the 6th can learn from a health issue. So they might have physical things that they are going through. I know a few people with North Node in the 6th, and they do. They suffer with physical things. Some have epilepsy. Some have like full-on physical ailments. Some things are indescribable. Some of them you can't even find. Some of it's in the mind. So North Node in there, but South Node in there is actually moving away from that, is actually transcending the physical on a very spiritual level, not dying, but just transcending the physical on a spiritual level and not falling into the negative emotions of the physicality and the disharmony with the body. And I just wrote for South Node in the 6th, nothing changes if nothing changes. And I think that it can be very hamster on a wheel, South Node in the 6th, because they've got a big task to move towards that 12th house. They've really got to give up sort of their self and unite and merge with the divine consciousness, which can be difficult for a South Node in the 6th person because they're about work and routine and structure and their body, you know, for them to move away from that is their greatest calling. So, hope you loved it. I loved it. Week 2 down, nodes. The very, very, very small part of nodes is now being taught to you guys. You've obviously going to have worlds of more information out there and things you want to research and read and ask and all those sorts of things. So that's exciting. Enjoy diving into your houses and the nodes and angular houses and anything else that's sort of happening in your chart with your nodes and your families. And I will see you next week and chat about my favorite. I call him a planet, even though he's not, but I think Chiron is a planet. I love Chiron. Chiron is my favorite. So we get to talk Chiron next week. But until then, have an amazing week diving in and delving more into the nodes. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Biggest blessings. Namaste.